Hello, everybody. Welcome to a rough one. To be honest with you, another episode of the Let's Talk Broncos podcast. We just saw the Broncos' first game of the season. Football's back, and man, that one, a mixed bag. I think there's some very high highs and some very low lows in that game, and it leaves me entering this one feeling a bit depressed. I have a drink with me, which is rare for the show, but man, that one was tough to stomach. Frankie, how are you feeling right now? Excuse me. How are you feeling?
I'm all right. This is probably terrible, but I'm kind of the same no matter what. I'm excited to watch the film tomorrow, see what's going on. We saw some fun stuff out of the defense. The special teams was pretty strong. Obviously, I think me and Robbie were kind of going into this one kind of saying to everybody, really trying to hark hey, this is one of the toughest situations for a rookie quarterback to go through. And yes, he very much underdid those expectations, even of us being good defensive coordinator, really tough environment. Hadn't really gotten to see an NFL defense in the preseason. It was always going to be a rough outing, but yeah, holy shit. We saw a lot of regression from the positives we saw in the preseason. And we can just kind of get into it, but ugly first start for Bo Nix, but it's not over yet. The story isn't fully written. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are, he's cooked. He's not going to be an NFL caliber quarterback. We don't know yet. We don't know. We still have a lot of time to see. There's a lot of games left in the season, but something else I'm going to point out to a lot of people, the defenses do not get easier from here. So another thing I point out, last year, 7 of the top 10 defenses by DVOA or by DVOA, those are in the first 10 weeks of Denver's season. I don't know if I said that correctly. So 7 of Denver's first 10 opponents were top 10 in DVOA last season. That's what I was trying to say. Next week, they get the Steelers, who looked really good today on defense. A very strong pass rush. It'll be very interesting to see how Denver kind of mitigates that. And then I think the week after that, it's the Jets, who probably the best defense in the league.
Sorry, did you get the Bucks in there?
Oh, and the Bucks in there too. Who the Bucks are kind of interesting, personnel wise, we'll see. But I mean, it's still a good unit,
Dang, man. Shout out to I haven't seen you in the chat before. Travis XX7 hitting us up with a super sticker. Thank you for the support, Travis.
Got the Jeffrey album. We respect it.
Yeah, means a lot after this struggling game. Frankie, I think we'll maybe get into your we'll get into the Bo Nix of it all first, then I think I'll do your stock down. My stock down, then we'll get into stock ups and things on a uplifting note maybe. But first, I want to, the chat is so active. I appreciate you guys being there. Find us over on YouTube. Let's Talk Broncos. Links over on my Twitter if you're watching us on Twitter. But the chat's so active. I want to see what they're saying. Similar to us, kind of. Let's Talk Broncos Muse saying, what did I just witness? But, a little bit of optimism. This is hopefully the worst Bo Nix will look all year. We've got Paul saying 0 yards after catch, tough to win in the NFL. I think that's going to be a consistent problem with this skill group, and apt observation by Paul. In Simbi, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, coming in with some optimism. Guys, Bo Nix played what you would hope is his worst career game, and we only lost by 6. Cope time, we back next week. Hopefully. Mr. Rocket, it makes me feel better knowing all rookie quarterbacks didn't play well, while Bo played against the best team out of the 3 with the worst roster. Hey, I like that we're getting some cope in here early. Run game awful too, says Paul. Travis with a comment with the super sticker. Got to get him up here. Will the pain ever end? Man,
probably not.
I could have named the episode that. That's kind of how it feels after that debut. But yeah, let's get into the Bo Nix of it all. I'll open it up because I just imagine your takes will be a little deeper. But I'll open up by just saying, man, that was really disheartening. I came on this show, Wednesday and was on, other Broncos podcasts throughout the week, and a Seahawks podcast, and said, expect Bo Nix to look rough. He's going against a really genius defensive play caller with Mike McDonald. It's a fair point from D Bronx too. Though I think we know these receivers aren't yak creators, which is my one thing. I don't think we can say it's circumstantial when we know these players Yak guys. Like, yes, the circumstance is one where even if they had those guys, the Yak wouldn't be there. By the way, I should have read D-Bronx's comment. I'm so tired of the Yak complaints. You're not going to get Yak when the defense knows 75% of your passes are at or behind the line of scrimmage. And that's absolutely true. They need to open some things up. But anyways, where I was going, I expected it to look rough for Bo Nix. This was well under the low bar that I was setting for him. I was glad to see something positive in garbage time, but I mean, he was a good bit off target on like screen passes. He on dump offs. It felt for a lot of the game like the offense didn't trust him to operate anything downfield. That or he was unwilling to take any shots downfield and was way too quick to go to the check down. It felt a lot like the Russell Wilson passing attack in regards to not being able to use the middle of the field, everything being behind the line of scrimmage seemingly, except the Russell Wilson offense at least had those deep shots, which this one didn't have. I think the accuracy, Bo Nix, I think there's maybe some differing opinions in like film circles about his accuracy, but Sean Payton hyped him up a week or two ago as an elite accurate quarterback or like has elite accuracy. And I mean, he's the few downfield shots they were taking in that first half, he was missing bad. I just, man, what is your take on this Bo Nix debut, Frankie?
His footwork was pissing me off so much. So a lot of the talk in the preseason, we saw it in that first game against Indianapolis, is he's not really keeping calm feet in the pocket. In the preseason, it wasn't really that glaring of an issue, and I talked about this a lot. He didn't face a single blitz in the preseason. If you go back, he didn't face a 5-man pressure one time in the preseason. The Packers especially played a very generic vanilla cover 3, cover 2 defense the entire game. Colts are pretty similar. They did show like one double mugged linebacker look, but they dropped out of it. From that first half, the way it looked to me, and it was kind of one of those things where like, man, I wish teams would have blitzed in the preseason against him. He looked scared to get hit. He straight up looked like he was dropping back. He was scared to kind of just set in the pocket. He was scared to reset in the middle of a pocket. On the plays where they ran movement plays, and I talked about this too in the preseason. The offense we saw in the preseason, which was mainly a lot of pure drop back stuff, I didn't think we were going to see that much of it, and we saw that today. The first 2 dropbacks for Bo Nix were designed rollouts. Let's get him on the move. He's good at throwing on the move. Give him levels to kind of see, okay, does he want to go medium, deep, or short? Or does he want to scramble? And today he was clearly like, he had either like, there were a couple plays where he'd have lanes to take off just to get himself a couple yards, at least get yourself a positive gain. And while one of his positives is his ability to keep his eyes upfield, you just saw him thinking too much. Like, oh, do I want to try to pump fake or run, or do I want to try to make a pass? And then he'd either throw a trick shot that was horribly inaccurate, sometimes intercepted, as we saw on that final picky throw, which was just horrendous. Or other times he'd decide to scramble too late, and then he's running out of bounds either 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage or right at the line of scrimmage. And as we saw on the one big pickup he had, it's like, this is something we knew from the preseason. Like, Bo can run. Like, he's not like a slow player. Like, there was a play in the first half where I don't know who it was on the Seahawks, but it was like number 58. And Bo's running to the outside, and he's not able to like beat 58 to the corner. And I was watching it just kind of like, I know Bo Nix is faster than that. Genuinely, it just made me think like, dude, like this guy's just way too in his head. And again, the footwork stuff was killer all game. He refused to just reset in the pocket and make simple throws. And as you mentioned, that affected his accuracy so much throughout the game. We saw it cleaned up a little bit on that final drive when he was finally willing to just hit the top of his 3, hit a guy on time, and just work the concept. But the rest of the time, we're seeing him get to the top, and instead of just taking that one step up and throwing to the progression, because I don't want to like it felt like most of the time his eyes were in the right spots, at least from how I kind of saw it. Like, I mean, they weren't having a lot of plays where he was having to push the ball downfield, but outside of getting too quick to dump offs, there weren't too many reads where I was like, that's the bad one, outside of a couple of the double coverage throws. But even the triple coverage one where it's kind of like, dude, like, either you need to lay that out in front of the guy and give it so your receiver is the only one who has a chance for that one, or you just toss that one away, or you maybe try to hit the deep over. But until I get the film, I can't really know. But like, again, his process just seems so quickened up. Again, I talked about this in the chat with you guys. I think a big combination with that too is this team doesn't really have any quick separators. And today they pretty much resorted to just being all quick game. I mean, towards the end of the game, they were literally just running stick out, and that was basically the offense for how they got down the field on that 2-minute drill. Well, when your receivers are, and this isn't me trying to roast these guys, this is just kind of the archetype of receivers they are. When you have Cortland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, Little Jordan Humphrey, when you have bigger bodies, like these are guys that aren't going to be super quick getting in and out of their breaks. These aren't like Jamar Chase running to the flat for you real quick. These are guys that it takes them a little bit. They take a second to get out of these breaks. And then when they do, as we saw, sometimes there's just a touch slow and then the ball's right on their hands and then they drop it, And again, this isn't me trying to make excuses for Bo. Bo was absolute poop today, but it was a combination today of just so many things. Bo being sped up along with, I think, the rest of the offense being a little bit more slowed down. And yeah, man, it was an absolute mess out there. But again, I do want to comment on that comment. It's only a 6-point loss, and we knew this was going to be a hard game. We knew this was going to be one of the tougher openings you could have for a rookie quarterback. And this isn't me trying to compare it. Like, Caleb got to face the Titans, and that's not me saying the Titans are bad. He got to face the Titans with a new defensive coordinator. Not that the Seahawks don't have a new defensive coordinator. The Broncos had to face Mike McDonald in Seattle, right, with a very good defensive unit. And that, so that was all I want to say. I think that was enough, a little bit of both sides. But yeah, hard day.
Yeah, I think if you want to go positive here, if you want the Bo Nix optimism, I think it has very little to do with the play and just, man, hopefully we can throw this one out, in the sense of that, hey, it's a rookie debut. It is a very complex defense. Beyond that, it's famously very hard to communicate in Seattle. He looked shell-shocked for a fair bit of that game. I think there's this comment from D Bronx here. I think it's pretty dead on. I was fine with the rollouts to get him going and build some confidence early, but then when he didn't hit those, it just felt like it spiraled. And I really agree with that. It felt like when things started going awry early, like those first few drives, I don't think were terrible from Bo. He didn't throw the ball a lot, but the few throws he had, it was like, okay, underneath stuff, whatever. But I thought it looked fine. It started getting ugly. I felt kind of as the first half went on, where it was just like, God, this guy needs to settle down some. The feet is dead on. The feet were very panicky. It felt like he was fading away on a very, very, very large percentage of his dropbacks. Yeah, the trick shots, but also then just like trying to fall away from pressure, which is troubling. And again, I think all these things are worrying, even if we're going to say, he was shell-shocked, he was overwhelmed in his rookie debut or whatever. I think these are things that are at least ominous, even if they're excusable. I think, again, ideally, you'd rather see your quarterback be not unflappable. Again, that's probably an unfair, unrealistic expectation, but maybe not so easily flapped. Maybe that's a better way to put it. So I just, I don't know. And again, there's not a great opportunity for him to get off the mat. It's Pittsburgh right after this, and TJ Watt was a man possessed today in the early slot. Then you've got the Bucks, who, you laid out some questions with their defensive personnel, but Todd Bowles is like the master of giving questionable quarterbacks a hard time. He's kind of like great quarterbacks can dice him up. Bad quarterbacks really struggle with him. He's kind of I don't know, the hurdle to clear. And that's a rough hurdle to be thrown right after the Seahawks and Steelers defenses. Then you get the Jets, like you talked about. That's maybe the best defense in the league. And then the Raiders are going to have a chance to be in the convo there as well. Even when you get to the Chargers, who on paper are a bad defense, they're getting coached up by Jesse Minter off this Mike McDonald tree. And that's a complex defense where even if the talent's not great, you're not going to be getting easy answers for the test. So, it's going to be a trial by fire for him. But hopefully it can be a little closer to what we saw in that 2-minute drill. And things were simplified there, but I don't know. It has to get a little more open than it was for much of the game. And some of that's him getting to the dump offs too quick. But man, the run game was incredibly ineffective. I think because in part Seattle was daring them to throw it on them. The underneath passing game kind of went away too as a result. It just, God, man, it was ugly. I think
Yeah.
that again, the optimism is just, whoa, this was a rough spot. Rookie debut. It seemed like maybe he started spiraling early and couldn't pull out. And hopefully, because it looked so different than what we saw preseason,
Mm.
hopefully he regresses more towards or progresses more towards that preseason mean in his next look. It's just yikes.
Yeah. And I will say too, like I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the play calling because again, this is a week one game. They'll obviously install adjustments. They'll install things that might work better. They might recognize some things that they didn't like this week and yank some of those out. But one thing I'll say that kind of confused me as we got into the second half from Sean Payton is early in the game, like the RPO game, those quick, like, all right, fake throw to the flat. Let's get Josh Reynolds quick on the move. That kind of stuff was working pretty well for them early, that I was a little interested to see them move away from that stuff. And I was also pretty surprised, like, it felt like Sean in this game, and I think people are gonna think this is kind of weird. It felt like Sean literally thought he just had like old Breeze, like it felt like he just thought he had like 30-year-old Breeze back there. And it's like, nah, dude, like you need to like there were a lot of training wheels for Nix, but I don't think they were the right kind of training wheels, if that makes sense. Like, as crazy as it sounds, I know he might have missed a couple of those boot out plays. Spam those. The QB run game, where was it? I was expecting to see that the lead read that we've seen like 3 times in the preseason, and it works every single time. Where was that? I was expecting a lot more just pure under center running, which again, their 12 personnel isn't great, but we saw that one big burst from Estime up the middle. I think we saw Javonte have a couple decent runs too. And again, obviously they started collapsing down on that stuff, but it was just kind of a lot of weird answers, I think, to what I think you'd want to do against this type of defense. And again, something that kind of makes me a little more concerned, as much as we're talking about how Mike Macdonald's this great defensive coordinator. There were a lot of times in that second half where he said, I don't need to run something crazy. Like, I mean, I saw Coach Foss playing this. I mean, there were a few reps, and this has to do with the Broncos receivers and Bo Nix. They were just straight running up. They were just straight running cover one because, well, your receivers can't get off the line of scrimmage against ours, even though that one to Cortland Sutton was bullshit. That should have been a holding call. But to be honest, Denver's not pushing it beyond the sticks. So Russ might not even be looking at them, like they're not expecting the ball to even get that far. So, like, it was just a mess. And it just, yeah, man, it really felt like they had very few things to pivot to once the things that they had not working weren't working, if that makes sense. Like, they really just didn't have anywhere to adjust on offense. And man, I mean, you started to see the offensive line fall a little apart when Bulls went down too. The tight end room is just not blocking well. It's just,
well, and that's it. There are some clear talent issues on this team, and I think with the preseason went so well, and training camp's always hype season, off season's always hype season, so it was easy to forget about it. But again, this team they are taking on the biggest cap hit, biggest cap hit in NFL history, and it's a dead cap hit. Like it's insane. They have 20% less financial resources to build this team with, and that's not to even get into all the players on rookie contracts they're missing as a result of trading draft picks. Like they are at a serious talent deficit. I will get into some things that looked good here later on. I think on defense, there's some things to really be excited about. But this, like, when you have 50 million in dead cap, there's going to be some, and missing all the draft picks they've missed. Those are going to show up somewhere. I think it's showing up in the receiver room right now. I think it's showing up at tight end big time. But yeah, they just can't separate. And to that point, it's something I'm worried about because you look at like Bryce Young, who I think is frankly just a lesser quarterback than Bo from like a lot of different ways. But physically, doesn't have the upside that even a Bo Nix does. And Bo Nix isn't like an overwhelming presence. But nonetheless, I think there's similar kind of types of players. You want them to be I don't know, that game manager type for last, that field general type maybe is the more complimentary way to say it. And if you have receivers that can't separate, that is an incredibly hard way to live at quarterback. And we saw that last year with Bryce Young. And I think we might experience that this year with Bo Nix. My concern is if that's the problem all year long, you are going to give this guy horrible habits going forward. Like even if some other stuff gets fixed and like, let's just live in a world where Bo Nix is the right quarterback. Maybe you ruin him with this first year by giving him awful habits by having no open receivers for him to work with the whole season. Now, I don't know how accurate that is because Sean Payton can still game it up. I think there were still some open targets that Bo Nix definitely missed.
100%.
something to be worried about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when I talk about the separation issue, that only really becomes a problem with the fact that they just got limited to being only able to do quick game. Like they weren't able to work concepts down the field because Bo seemingly wasn't willing to throw them. We'll have to see if any of them were open. He wasn't working his pocket well, so he wasn't giving the receivers time to get open downfield. So, right, I mean, the quick game just wasn't really an option. And then outside of that, too, I had something I was about to say. Whatever. The interior of the offensive line, I thought actually ended up being better than I thought, which was kind of, again, like, it's one of those things where I want to kind of be like, oh, I do believe this can get better. But, man, like, I think this might have been kind of like, I think this was an opportunity for him to have a better, like, not opportunity to have a better showing, but really an opportunity for him to have just kind of like a decent showing. At least we did see open opportunities. We did see downfield receivers that he was just missing. I mean, there was the play on the dig to Cortland Sutton that he completely missed. He had the play action curl route that he wasn't able to get the ball out to. There was the deep pass to the end zone that was picked off that, like, I'll have to end up looking at it from the end zone angle, but like he just ended up lollipopping that thing and letting the DB jump it, where I think if he angles that to the back of the end zone, I don't think your one high safety is beating Cortland Sutton there. Like, so many little details that just, like, it's alarming. And when you talk about the bad habits, it's really scary that, like, and I think a lot of draft analysts talked about this. When you watched Oregon Bo Nix, you did not see a lot of Auburn Bo Nix. It was very encouraging. Like, man, maybe he really did get a lot of these bad habits. Today, we saw him revert right back to Auburn Bo Nix, especially with some of the footwork stuff, the hero plays, like that last pick, like he's like sidearm slinging it in there. It's just like,
well, the first one, like that wasn't a hero ball play, but it's like he's so late on it. He's looking at it, he hitches like 3-4 times and then throws it up into double coverage. It just, which is weird because again, I didn't see a guy in preseason that had no confidence in what he was seeing. And I don't think Mike McDonald, to the point you made earlier, was running the most complex stuff early in the game. But I wonder if there was some weird simulated earlier. I have no idea. But if there was something early that just made him so unsure of what he was seeing, because that's just what it felt to me the whole game. Like he had no confidence, no trust in what he was seeing.
Yeah.
He either wasn't seeing it, or then when he was seeing it, he was staring at it and like hitch. Okay, it's open, throw. And then by that time, the window's going to be closed, especially with his arm, which is fine, but it's not an Anthony Richardson arm where, okay, I can be a beat late because I can throw a fucking 100-mile-per-hour fastball in there.
Right.
Again, it's one game. I think, we shouldn't, bury the guy yet, but it was very concerning. I expected a rough debut, but I think that was also, it didn't clear the bar. Would you agree with that?
Dude, I mean, there's really no way around it. He threw multiple interceptions. He had 42 dropbacks, which again, I think is slightly on Sean Payton. I think you kind of like, the game plan was just weird today. Again, like it really feels like they wanted to do this, like the running through the air thing, where you throw a lot of these passes behind the line of scrimmage, and that's how you kind of pick up your chunk yardage on the ground. But again, when I think about like how this offense is built, and when I think about how Seattle and Mike McDonald's defense is structured, like, dude, just run at them, like literally run at them. I know that might sound crazy, and I know that they seem to like try, but it genuinely did seem like they just went away from it too much. And it's just like, man, like, I think if you just kept your guys going downhill, don't pull out these first down tosses. Don't, like, literally Javonte Estime downhill first. Like, our interior was good today. I'm guessing that Quinn and Powers are going to be guys I look back and say they had a pretty good game, because I don't think the interior really gave up too much pressure whatsoever. And this was the other point I want to make. Funnily enough, about what you're saying about McDonald kind of calling a bit more vanilla, is I was kind of paying attention on that final 2-minute drive. That was actually kind of where it seemed like McDonald was starting to heat him up a little bit. Like, I saw them kind of sending some more pressures on that drive alone, because I was really paying attention. Like, okay, are we going to get them just playing soft coverage? We saw Russ do that a billion times last year. We're end of the game, they're all playing off coverage. He's able to kind of get a good drive going. We're all like, hey. I genuinely don't think it was that. Like, I saw Mike actually send in some pretty decent pressures on that, but it just seemed like Bo was finally recognizing, like, okay, I need to throw to replace the blitz. I can't just, oh man, guys coming at me, let me just try to huck this up over the middle of the field to 3 defenders and hope none of them pick it off. Because, like, Jesus Christ, man, that's not the right decision. We're just so much baffling stuff. It's going to be scary going through a season with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. I will say, looking at the advanced analytics right now, really quick, it's not as bad as it felt in the moment. For sure. Like his air yards per attempt are 19th out of the 28 quarterbacks to play a game so far. Which again, it's bad, but it's not as absurd as like so he was at 6.3 today. We can talk about how again
Really?
compact the whole offense. Yeah, crazy.
That doesn't
Um,
make sense. That's
but
kind of
like
crazy.
we can talk about how compact the whole offense felt. 6.3 air yards per attempt. You got Justin Herbert at 6.2, Tua at 6.1, Mahomes at 5.9. That is a real commentary on like the skill group and how they can create things. Burrow at 5.6, Jaden Daniels at 5.2, Daniel Jones at 4.8, Baker Mayfield at 4.7, Minshew at 4.6. So he's like 50% above what the Raiders were doing today. So it's not to say it was good. It was very limited. It needs to build from where it was. But week one, it seems like there was a lot of bad quarterback play, a lot of bad offensive football around the league. Man, hopefully the Broncos are victims of some of that and it normalizes some. I don't know. It's really ugly. Let's get. We've spent a lot of time on Knicks. I think, and you guys are going to go into it much more in depth on Full Field Read on Friday. Correct, Frankie?
Cannot wait.
Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain.
I believe so, yes.
Sweet. People, please check that out. It is an amazing resource. I think that is going to be kind of our preview flagship show. We'll have fun with it on Wednesday. Mario and Pat will have some fun with it on Friday. But I think Frankie and Robbie really are in-depth preview. This is what's coming this week. Let's look at the Broncos film. Let's look at some Steelers film, and let's figure out what's coming in this game. It's almost like how a team preps, going through the game in a team meeting room during the week. So
a bit funnier. We're gonna be a bit
yes.
meaner to the players that we watch when they make mistakes, but that's okay.
To be fair, I don't know if you'll be much meaner than Sean Payton. I don't think he's one that plays it light. But people check that out. It is, they have fun with it. It's not a dry watch by any means, but very informative as well. Check that out. Anyways, let's get into the stocks up, stocks down. Open us up with your first stock down, Frankie.
Ooh, stock down. I mean, we've talked about, but I think you just got to kind of say the passing offense in general. And it's kind of crazy to think, and I won't harp on the Bo Nix part of it. I just want to talk about just like, I think the unit as a whole. After losing Tim Patrick, which again, I think a lot of us were like, man, and even through the preseason, it was like, man, Tim looks good. He's an effective slot player. He's consistent over the middle, which is what they need right now. Like,
they didn't have the weapons to afford to lose that. I know some people were down with like, let's get young, let's get, give these guys shots. And in theory, I'm on board with that because this is a rebuilding team. I think you watched today's game and it's like, holy shit, this team needs Tim Patrick's juice.
Yeah.
Not that it's a lot of juice, but God.
And it'd be nice if the 4th round pick they used at receiver was like not trying to beat up on anybody, but rosterable, considering they are probably going to have him be inactive for most.
How about the 2nd round pick they traded up for with Marvin Mims? I mean, he's one that stands out. We had some chats about him earlier, not getting on the field. Sean Payton deserves critique for that because it was his guy that he traded up for in the draft, right? I'm not blaming Sean Payton for the Marvin Mims utilization. Marvin Mims, I am a big believer that you earn your targets, you earn your reps. Him not getting these targets, him not getting these reps, even after Tim Patrick's gone from the team. Again, like he was playing late into the 4th quarter of the preseason. He was running with the starters at the start of training camp, and then he's running with the 2s and 3s for the end of training camp. The signals were there. And it's really unfortunate. This team desperately needs Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin to step up, and both of those guys look like the two, I don't know, the two least involved receivers on the 53.
Yeah.
Which is concerning. And I don't think it's a problem of the coaching staff being unwilling to use these guys. They desperately need them, and I think the staff is well aware of that. I think these guys, being Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, unfortunately just aren't ready.
I think a big part of it too, and I mean, we've talked about this a ton on Full Field Read, is like the utilization of Marvin Mims and what you'd kind of hope he would be in your offense, which, yes, you do want him to be able to make plays downfield and be vertical. But a lot of what you're doing with Marvin Mims isn't really going to be noticed by him, if that makes sense. Like a lot of what Marvin Mims is going to be doing is pulling defenders deep and helping guys get open up underneath. Well, guess what? Denver has no underneath targets. There's no one who you can be like, okay, Marvin Mims pulled a safety in a corner deep. Now we're hitting, insert tight end, insert slot receiver over the middle, and he now has extra space to run up the field. They don't have any of those guys. Maybe Dulcich can be that guy if he starts getting hit in stride and starts moving a little better. I don't know. But that's the other part of it too, is like what you want Marvin Mims to be doing in your offense. Yes, you do want him to be able to be more explosive and be an explosive weapon in your offense. But the other part of that, they really just can't do. Like they just don't have the ability to be like, all right, Marvin, we're just going to have you take the top off of them by running a deep over, grab the safeties, and hopefully the dig can come open on the backside because you're just occupying so much of their attention. The dig's not getting open because we just don't have another guy that can get open that quickly. It just doesn't exist. So it's just an all-around problem. The passing game in general, we talked about going to the offseason and then they lost Tim Patrick. And it's so funny to talk about now that they've kept him, but the reports are they were considering trading Cortland. Like, Jesus Christ, can you imagine if this team didn't have Cortland and Tim? What would they? I don't know what they do. And again, this isn't us trying to take the weight off of Bo Nix. Bo Nix sucked today, but man, it's kind of hard to evaluate your rookie quarterback when he's throwing the ball to guys that are practice squad candidates most of the time. That's not me trying to beat up on anybody, but little Jordan Humphrey is right now your wide receiver 3. He's been on practice squad most of his career. I like Vele. I want to see if Vele can end up being
on the practice squad. Sorry,
Vele is a 7th round pick, right? These are the guys you're being like, all right, Bo, let's see if you can create an offense out of it, and it's just not easy.
Well, and again, this part's not a Bo Nix problem. We saw this problem with Russ last year. Even when we were talking about Russ Wilson, it's like, God, you need some help there. Got some people using some code here. Nissan Coupe, man, it was a rough game. I'm sorry. I really don't think we're overreacting. I think, I would advise you get your head out of the sand. I mean, I don't know, man. Watch the game. I don't think we're even being that harsh.
No.
We're definitely suggesting hey, it's first game, reason for optimism. But also, I mean, how sensitive do you have to be to pull the wool over your eyes this hard? Are you not open to an actual discourse about how the players played today? Or do you just need sweet nothings whispered into your ear to function as an adult?
We're in the cons part of the pros cons. We're talking about what went bad today, and I think it's pretty easy. Again, the team lost, and they had 2 safeties. They got 2 safeties. I don't know if I've ever seen a game in my life. I don't know if there was a scoregami where that's never happened. In my lifetime of watching hundreds of NFL games, have never seen a team get 2 safeties, an interception, and they lost. And handedly. It wasn't really yes, they kind of were close to coming back. No, they just lost straight up. It was not oh man, this could have gone either way. No, they should have been handed a victory based on how Seattle played in the first half and ended up losing by what should have been double digits. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's the metric about how if you get a defensive or special teams touchdown, teams win 80% of the games or something. They get 10 points as a product of special teams and defense. And they need a garbage time touchdown to make it a 1 possession game at the end.
A respectable game, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even sorry, not to try to take away from Bo too. It's not like we saw Bo kind of oh man, he really made some big he made some decent throws on that drive. I'm not going to try to take away from him, but it's also not man, that drive, while I felt a little better, it's not I'm coming out away from that drive all right, now I'm feeling a bit more confidence. Bo Nix, we saw him work basic passing game concepts on that final drive. Then we saw him scramble into the end zone for a 4-yard touchdown. Yes, he was able to kind of break through a tackle, but we saw him completing stick and dragon for 40 yards. And I think they even had good field position from the Marvin Mims return on that drive. Exactly. It's just again, I wish we could be on this show being more optimistic about what we saw, but you just can't.
Yeah, it's rough. I think for my down, I'm going to go with the run defense. I imagine when we get into the ups here, we're going to be talking a lot about the defense. but it kind of went down the drain there for a bit in
What
the third
happened?
quarter when they just started leaning on Kenneth Walker, going to that run game. Man, they were gashing the Broncos every single time, getting around the edge pretty dang easily. And I do think that's maybe a problem to monitor going forward for this Broncos team. I love the pass rushers they got out there. And again, we're going to be spending a lot more time talking about that briefly. But one problem we've talked about all off season is they're fairly light in the pants. And man, when you see them fail time and time and time again to contain Kenneth Walker as he just leads the Seahawks down the field almost single-handedly, it was hard for maybe those shortcomings defending the run on the edge to not come to mind.
Yeah, and again, that's one thing that like I'm just super interested to go back and watch because D Bronx makes a good point. Again, I get that the defense got tired by the end of the game. They got wore down, whatever. But like, man, it really just feels like a switch flipped at halftime. Like in the first half, the defense truly looked elite, like on both pass and run defense. And honestly, the run defense probably looked better than the pass defense. Zach Allen looked like he was going to have a top 5 defensive tackle season from what we saw in the first half. He was not blockable. And then in the second half, like Kenneth Walker was ripping off like 8 yards a carry. They were not getting any pressure. Like, again, I completely understand the idea that these guys got tired, but like, I'm curious. Seattle clearly adjusted, like clearly things changed for Seattle. And dude, the other part of it too, and this is something that really concerns me. Like, and again, I'm not trying to take away from the fact they got tired. This Seattle O-line is very bad, and especially with the fact that their starting right tackle Abe Lucas didn't play today. Their backup right tackle George Fant got hurt in like the first quarter, probably like the third series. They were on their third string right tackle with not a great group of interior linemen, and Charles Cross at left tackle, who I actually like a decent bit, but not a strong group. This should be a group that our defensive front should have been able to dominate for 60 minutes. And again, I'm not trying to say they don't have an excuse to get tired, but like, I almost want to say like you kind of don't. You kind of need to be able to play, I don't know, 3/4 of a game well. It makes me a little sad if we're literally just like, oh man, well, they played a good half. It's like, yeah, dude, like, what's a good half? It's week 1. It is week 1. It is not going to get any easier in week 8. They're not going to be less tired. They're not going to be less gassed. They're not going to, guys are going to start getting hurt. Like, I want to give them the excuse like, oh man, the offense just wasn't pulling their weight, which yes, entirely they weren't. The offense was incredible for like the first 55% of the game, but it's just a little discouraging, especially on that final drive where I got really frustrated when you've got guys like Baron Browning making simple mistakes, jumping off sides on a 3rd and 11. You've got, simple things like pass coverage is getting blown by Alex Singleton on the wide open wheel route where he's just not running with the guy up the field. Like so many little things like that where, again, yes, like I'm sure they got tired. They probably got a little frustrated watching the offense seem like it's going to be the same thing again. But yeah, guys, you can't just decide to suck on offense. That's not really how that, or on defense. That's not really how that works. You don't just get to decide to go like, well, we're tired, so now we're going to become one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Like, because they were getting trounced in that second half. It seemed like every drive Seattle had, they were putting the drive together. Geno wasn't getting pressured at all. He was completing passes at all levels of the field. I'd say like DK obviously got locked up by Patrick Surtain. Tyler Lockett had a really good game, even though it seemed like Riley Moss was actually doing a pretty commendable job. Like where I was really excited to come out of this post-game show and be like, we're back. Denver has an elite defense. They're going to have some stuff to figure out in the secondary because obviously you're going to have a reduction in quality safety play going from Justin Simmons and Kareem, who, yes, Kareem had his issues, but Kareem was a hell of a tackler and he was a great communicator in that secondary. Now you got 2 guys that don't know what they're doing as well, and you're going to have growing pains with that. You're not going to expect these guys to be as good as 2 10-year veterans, So I'm a little bit, I don't want to say concerned because, again, we saw so much promise out of that first half, but I did want to see that defense really finish out that game, and I'm disappointed that they didn't. I can't say I'm not disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. It's by the end of it did become disappointing. I think there's some things to hold on to and be excited about. And you know what? Before we get into the stock ups and get optimistic here, I want to mention one thing I forgot to mention with Bo Nix. It'll transition us into the positive because it was an ugly debut today. I want to say, even if this goes horribly wrong, like let's live in the worst case scenario for a minute, and this is horribly wrong. He's a bust. it is still the Broncos are still much closer to the light at the end of the tunnel than they were 12 months ago. Like even this could go the worst possible way it could go for a first round rookie quarterback pick. And it's dramatically better. Why? Because they're not on the hook with Bo Nix. They can move on from Bo Nix whenever they want, and there won't be any downside to it. What they've done is they've removed the $40 million anvil that was on their neck from their neck. That's what they've done. And frankly, remember when they were negotiating with Sam Darnold? Remember when we thought it was going to be Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson quarterbacking this team? There was never necessarily the expectation that the Broncos would go from Russell Wilson to great quarterback play. The goal with moving off of Russell Wilson was getting him the fuck out of Denver because he's a cancer. That was the purpose of it. Truth bearer. Yeah, we got Seahawks, not even Seahawks fans. I'm sorry. We got Russell Wilson fans in the chat, victory lapping while their guy was holding Justin Fields' clipboard all day. Guys, wake up, rejoin reality whenever the fuck you're ready. The guy, he's not an NFL quarterback anymore. The Steelers are going to find that out very shortly. Maybe he starts next week. Dude is going to get benched before he plays 5 games. I mean, be careful, y'all. Like, be careful, y'all, with this victory lapping when he is holding a clipboard. All the more reason. Frankly, this is a veteran that tweaked his calf and isn't ready to go week 1, and we were going to guarantee him $40 million in 2025? That's a nightmare. Sorry.
Oh, my goodness. Congrats. That was great. That was fantastic. No notes.
2023 version of Russ would win the Super Bowl? No, he won't. No, he won't. That's why he was battling with Justin Fields for a starting quarterback job, buddy. That's why he's on the vet minimum. I mean, rejoin reality, please.
Zach, I'm smelling what you're cooking, and it's delicious. It's a souffle. It's wonderful.
Let
me say this.
I've had my Twitter back and forth with them.
I've seen a lot of people try to make this claim. Here's the thing, guys. No matter how bad Bo Nix looks this season, and I might end up eating those words if he throws like 30 picks, I will take a rookie quarterback season 100 times over $50 million Russell Wilson or an entire season of Jarrett Stidham. Hands down. I do not care. This game did not change my opinion in the slightest that I am glad that Denver went with a rookie quarterback. Because at the end of the day, yeah, man, what the fuck else were you going to do? Get everyone fired because Jarrett Stidham's your quarterback? Roll Russ back out there when he's not healthy enough to even see the field? Nah, man, they needed to do something. The options were literally a guy that already is not good enough to be a starter, whether that's Stidham or that's Russell Wilson, or you take the fucking wild card, and we still don't know. That's the other part about it. This dude, we don't know. We could still see Bo Nix bounce back. A little bit of a positive I want to say today. We did still see a couple of plays where he got to the top of his drop and had better timing throws than we saw from Russ all season last year. The first drop we saw from little Jordan Humphrey on that quick choice route by the receiver. Do you know how many times Russell Wilson missed that same goddamn throw to Jerry Jeudy last year? Do you know how many times I went back and I'd be like, oh man, 3rd and 4, here we go. And Jerry Jeudy is running one of these, and Russ is he's running around the pocket. No, man. No, I don't want to hear it. That's madness right here. Yes, we saw a lot of dog shit out of Bo Nix today, and I'm not trying to pretend like, oh, man, we got our savior here. No, not at all. But as Zach said, we're way closer to finding the solution than we were having 36-year-old fucking backup dancer for Sierra back there running in a circle, getting his ass taken down by Max Crosby 5 times a game. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, and I will say again, the Sean Payton era can go down in flames and all that, and the Broncos will finally have a clean slate. Again, the Russell Wilson trade is one of the worst moves NFL franchise has ever made. I said it when Russ was looking bad that year, that this could screw up the next 4-5 years for the Denver Broncos, and it might end up doing that. The important thing is the Broncos are closer to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Can I say one more thing too?
Please do.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The goal of this season, let me make it very clear for everybody. The goal of the season is not to win a ton of games and make the playoffs. That would be a cherry on top if they could miraculously do that. That would be awesome. The entirety of this season is about figuring out whether or not Bo Nix is a good quarterback or not. And we got one step closer to that answer today. We are one step closer to getting to that goal. Yes, the answer might end up being that he's not, but guess what? That is still a successful evaluation season. You are literally trying to figure out what you have in this guy. The reason we got rid of Russell Wilson was because for 2 years, we saw what we had in that guy. Now we got to see what we have in this guy. And you're right, it might not be that great. So why I can't keep getting mixed up in truth there. What are some other positives we saw from today?
Let's get into the stock ups. What's your stock up, Frankie?
So I said it already, and I'm, again, a little disappointed without it. Zach Allen looked incredible. Zach Allen in that first half looked like he was going to be in for a monster season. After they've already gotten contracts to Patrick Surtain and Quinn Miners, I am very interested in seeing when they're going to extend Zach Allen. Still a 27-year-old player. He's kind of like Jonathan Cooper in the fact that he has only improved. He's a great cog in the Vance Joseph defense. He's really strong against the run the pass. He plays a shit ton of snaps. I think he played 1,100 snaps last year for Denver, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this is a guy that you lock up when you can. He's still ascending. And again, today he looked like last year was a little concerning the first couple of weeks of the season. He was all right in the Raiders game, but it really took until that Bears game for him to come online. It's very exciting. I think that in the first week of the season, we're already seeing him, I think, come online a little bit. He had multiple pressures in that first half. The first one led to an interception by Alex Singleton. I'm excited to see what Zach Allen can do this season. I am of the belief that he had a top 8 interior defensive line season last year, which when you think about the absurd group of players in the NFL at that group, that's incredible. And yes, you might be able to argue against it. The stats don't lie. He was one of the most productive players on the interior in the entire league last season. And if he can do that again, he's going to be a massively high paid player after this year. Not that he's not already, but we're going to see him genuinely I think get probably top 10 money at that position.
Yeah. The edge rushing group is really exciting to me. I hope they can stay in somewhat positive game scripts all year long, because man, if the offense is like this, they're going to be playing from a deficit, and then you're not going to get to see the pass rush tee off, and it's going to be more of what we saw in that third quarter. But man, that first half was so much fun. Joey was in our group chat. I don't know if he was tweeting it out, but talking about how dang, I haven't seen the defense look like this since 2015. This defensive front is playing insane, and they were. Now some of that's the talent on the Seahawks defensive or offensive line. Rather, they were projected to be I think 31st on the offensive line by PFF in the preseason. So that's there's some talent issues there. But man, they were just cooking them up. Nick Benito looked great, had a number of big splash plays. Baron Browning had a number of massive plays. You highlighted Zach Allen already. And then Jonathan Cooper was a one-man wrecking crew. He was this might have been the best game I've ever seen from Jonathan Cooper. He was all over the place. He was so damn impactful. They highlighted the stat during the broadcast, but Broncos Country hasn't seen a double-digit sack artist since the 2018 season. Man, getting 2 right off the bat with Jonathan Cooper. And if he plays it all like he showed today, he will hit that double-digit sack mark and make himself a good bit more expensive when that contract expires at season's end.
Stop sleeping on Jonathan Cooper. I've been saying it he's been the best, of all, there's a lot of exciting, I don't want to take away from him. There's a lot of exciting guys, a lot of potentially really good players in the Broncos edge room. Jonathan Cooper is just a straight up good player. You don't need to question if he will, oh man, we need to see him develop this. No, he's pretty solid all around. He's only gotten better every single year. He's another guy that hasn't dealt with injuries. His pass rush arsenal only gets better every single year. He's decently athletic. He can drop into space. I could go on for days about how much I love Jonathan Cooper, and you nailed it. I think he is going to be one of those guys. He reminds me a lot of DeMarcus Walker when DeMarcus Walker left, where I think he's going to get a mammoth bag from a team this offseason. I don't know if it'll be Denver. I kind of don't think it will be, but I think he's going to get a mammoth bag. I hope it will be. It'll be interesting because they have a lot of holes to fill, and just how Sean has been with people that he didn't draft, I'd be interested. So, again, completely possible. I would take him over Browning if they had to pick, but just again, I think he's going to be costly, So I think he's going to cost at least $16, $17 million a year.
Oh, I don't think he'll get up there. I think he'll be in the 10, 12 range. I'll look at highest paid.
I'm going off a complete nothingness right there. But again, man, it's hard to take away from a guy. He had he was the second leading pressure guy in the Broncos last year. I'm pretty sure he had like 50 or 60. Year before that, he was also consistent good player.
Some of
This
that
year,
is damning with faint praise, though, to be honest, with just like the people that were around. Like Calais Campbell led the Falcons in pressures last year.
true, but again, we also saw him get, I think, 8.5 sacks last year. Like, I'm just one of those guys that I look at how Jonathan Cooper's trajectory in the NFL has been, and I have a hard time looking at this as a guy who's going to go onto the market and sign kind of a steal. Sorry, finish what you're saying.
No. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to say I got the numbers for you here. Like Bryce Huff, I'll try to find ones that were signed this past offseason. Alex Highsmith was signed fairly recently too. Bryce Huff and Alex Highsmith are in that like 17 million range. Harold Landry at 17.5. I think he comes in under Hassan Reddick's at 15.
I think he'll be right there, I guess, is what I'd say.
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of that has to do with he's going to hit free agency, so there will be teams competing for him, or if Denver can lock him up beforehand.
Yeah, Dorrance Armstrong signed for 11 in free agency.
Okay.
So I would say I think somewhere between that 11 and 17 numbers where he falls. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they keep, who they let walk, because they will have a lot of money. They still will have a lot of dead cap, and they'll have a lot of players to make decisions on. I'm excited they've at least locked up PS2 and Quinn Miners going forward. I guess it's time for my stock up. I was going to go with the pass rush. I should have known you were going to go with that route because it's the definite answer of the day. I should have had one better. I'll go. You know what? How about Justin Skinner? I think a lot of it, or not Justin Skinner. What's his name? JL Skinner. A lot of my players are different defensive front players. I got DJ Jones highlighted and Zach Allen and whatnot. So going down the list a bit, I'm going to go here with Riley Moss is a good answer too. These are both kind of like little ones with some flaws in them, so I'll give both a little shout out. JL Skinner had some awesome plays on special teams, had a good tackle on the opening kickoff. Is the guy who recovers that muffed punt down at the 1 yard line. Recovers a fumble, and then also is the one that I think was in on the play downed at the 1 yard line. So JL Skinner, hugely valuable for like 5 of the Broncos' 20 points today. Considering how few snaps he's playing, I think you absolutely have to highlight that. And then, Riley Moss. I mean, the Seahawks have one of the better receiving groups in the league. There's no downs off. You're going against someone solid every single time. And, I think second half there were some more warts in his performance. I'm curious what his final matchup and target stats look like. But overall, I thought he held up pretty well in coverage. He had some really nice tackles. His tackle of Kenneth Walker, where he just latched onto the stiff arm and dragged him down by it, was pretty sweet. So I thought it was a nice showing from him.
I liked what I saw out of Riley Moss today. I mean, again, like you said, he's facing Tyler Lockett, which Tyler Lockett's probably closer to a top 10 receiver of our generation than top 50. He's just genuinely one of those dudes and has been for such a long time. One of the best separators, pretty much. I don't know. Tyler Lockett's really good, and we kind of saw that repeatedly today where Riley Moss had good coverage a lot of the time. He was right in phase with him, but just a better throw, better receiver, better catch. Ends up kind of creating some first downs for him, but I completely agree. I thought Riley had a great day. Building off your JL Skinner point, I thought Riley Dixon had a really good day as well, the other Riley. Again, Dixon was a guy who was in a punter battle this preseason. It was very interesting to see if they would go with the guy like Trenton Gill, who was the younger guy with, I think, a bigger leg. But today, Riley was booming the goddamn ball. There was one I think he hit. They almost had one where they had a second one where they downed at the one where Tremont just missed. I think they were, I don't remember which side of the field they were going, but he had a couple that I think were 60 yards plus that good job. We needed Dixon. Last year, our special teams, especially our punt coverage, was incredible. But funnily enough, our punter was kind of one of the more mediocre. I think he was around 20th ranked in a lot of gross and net stats as far as punting goes. So, like you said, if they can continue to have a really strong punt coverage unit, which it looks like they do, combined with an improved punter who's actually setting up good field position, I mean, it's only going to help the defense. I thought the special teams was electric today.
Yeah, offense needs to be a little more functional right now. I've been saying it since Russ was gone. I'll give the Russ fan in the chat a little bit of credit. The one thing I've been saying since Russ was gone was the offense will be better without him, just because Russ is so unable to do so many different things. Quick game, target the intermediate part of the field, target between the hashes, where it just pairs your playbook down so much that I thought Bo Nix, maybe he comes out and is just like a Teddy Bridgewater game manager type, but even that should be so much better than what they got last year from Russ. And this first game, it was not better than what they got from Russ. And I think that's incredibly disappointing. If they're able to, and I think it's definitely possible, if they're able to get back to what we were hoping it would be, this team could still have some exciting elements to it. I think the defense is really promising if you can give them positive game scripts. I worry about this defense playing from behind, but if you can get some good early scripts out of Sean Payton, some better offensive performances, and let these pass rushers pin their ears back, I think it'll be really, really fun.
I'll say it. I'll stand on it. This offense is still going to be better than it was with Russ. I don't care. Even with what we saw, I saw so many people. I had a tweet a couple weeks ago about how finally Sean Payton can take off the handcuffs he's had on because he had to call an offense with Bo Nix or with Russell Wilson. People were like, oh, look, he had to do the same thing with Bo Nix. Yeah, this was the exact same offense he was running with Russ. Yes, we didn't have a single deep bomb up the sideline. Instead, we had the back shoulder throw to Josh Reynolds instead of a catch to Cortland Sutton. This was very much the same offense. And guess what? It's week 1 of his rookie season. Do you think they're not good? Here's the thing, for anyone wondering. With a rookie quarterback, they are going to be adding things throughout the season. Bo Nix, they are going to discover things they're good at. Guess what they had to do with Russell Wilson last year? They slowly pulled things out of the playbook. They said, holy shit, he can't run that. He can't run that either. Oh my God, we can't run quick game. Oh, he can't throw over the middle. Oh, and he's really inaccurate when it comes to throwing underneath passes. What do? That was the entirety of last season. Yes, Bo Nix showed some bad stuff today, but he also showed some stuff you can build on. There is also, as I mentioned earlier, things that you can do in this offense to make it a bit easier on him. And again, it is week 1. Bo is going to get smarter. He's going to have better adjustments at the line as the year goes along. He is going to get better control of the offense and the huddle. Am I saying that he is going to be way better or even good? No. But yeah, he's going to grow in the offense. We watched Russell Wilson shrink in the offense. So I am still completely willing to stand on the fact that, yes, this offense, I don't know if it's going to be more productive, but it will definitely be more expansive than what we saw last year with Russ, which I felt like they ran 6 plays a game.
And it just was such a different player than what we saw in the preseason. Again, even Caleb Williams had his warts today. I thought overall was a fine performance, even if the stats don't reflect that. But he looked a lot like the player we saw in the preseason. Bo Nix, D-Bronx commented it earlier, there was some of the footwork stuff in the Colts game, but it was not. I mean, I don't think we saw anything like this level of gun shyness and lack of confidence in the preseason. So I'm hopeful that it should be closer to that mean. And it's going to be harder than it was in the preseason. It's not going to be straight vanilla defenses and third teamers or whatever. But it also, I'm hoping isn't this hard game in and game out. At least in week 2, he should have the crowd on his side. Maybe that makes the communication and some of that stuff a little easier.
My hope, and again, I'm basing this on nothing, but it seems like this is what we kind of saw in that fourth quarter. It does seem like Bo loosened up a little bit. He just seemed like the screws were turned so tight early on in that game where he was overthinking everything. And again, we talked about this when we went through his college tape and his preseason tape. One thing that was really exciting about Bo, whether you think he's going to be limited as a quarterback, his decision-making was usually pretty quick and pretty good, straight up. That's why he was so effective at running a lot of this RPO behind the line of scrimmage stuff at Oregon, is because he was generally able to execute that stuff at a very high level. I still believe, based on what we saw today, he can do that. Again, it just seemed like he had the screws turned so tight early on in that game. I think, again, he seemed so scared to get hit in that first half. He was so quick to check it down. He was scared to truly just tuck the ball and take off for a few. Even the play where he, maybe he got the first down, maybe he didn't, where they called him short, but ended up calling him right. That's probably a play right there where you can pick up a couple extra. You're 220, bro. I'm not saying don't protect yourself, but I think as we got in the game and in that fourth quarter, like he started taking some shots. Because again, as we were saying, Mike Macdonald, it's not like Mike Macdonald was just playing vanilla. Like he didn't necessarily do all the Mike Macdonald things we usually see with just a bunch of sim pressures. To be honest, he was sending 5 and 6 a lot more than I thought he would. But exactly, he just didn't seem confident in the stuff he was doing. But again, it seemed like as we got a little later in the game, and yes, I'm not trying to pretend like, oh, we're good to go now, but it did seem like once he got hit a little bit, once he kind of felt like, all right, I already threw 2 picks. We're already down 13. What else do I have to lose? It did seem like he played a little bit calmer. He played a little bit cleaner. He had a couple plays where, and this is like bare minimum quarterback play. But again, it has been so rare we saw bare minimum quarterback play in the last 9 years that made me happy. Just get through your drop back, get to the top, eyes in the right spot, complete the pass. You don't need to add some extra stuff. You don't need to sidearm it. Let me just see you play quarterback. Not everyone needs to be Patrick Mahomes. That's why I hate college football right now. There's no mechanics anymore. There's no, like, you don't have Tom Brady's anymore coming out. It's all everyone wants to be the gunslinger. Let me throw behind the backs. Like, this isn't, we're not playing the Harlem Globetrotters right now. Like, you're going to an NFL franchise. You need to be able to execute NFL things. And I still believe that we saw examples once we got later in the fourth quarter of Bo Nix doing some NFL quarterback things, even though they were like the bare minimumist of quarterback things.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. I hope we see a little more. I generally agree with where you're at. Oh shoot, we got a super chat. If Bo sucks and we get a top 5 pick, what's the likelihood we draft a quarterback and hire a new coach? Ben Johnson, not overreacting, just thinking. I mean, if they were to hire a new coach, I mean, it's interesting. So that whole Lions thing is kind of off the Sean Payton tree. So I feel like it'd be a little weird to fire Sean Payton and then go to Ben Johnson. But Ben Johnson apparently it got hung up this past go around because if he's going to leave the Lions where he's very happy, he wants to get paid a boatload. Well, that's not a problem for Broncos ownership. So I think it makes sense on that front. I will say, even if this bombs out this season, I think the Broncos would be wise to run it back one more year with Bo and Sean Payton. Some of the problems with this offense are the personnel stuff with the weapons that Frankie and I have talked about plenty on this show. That will not be addressed until next offseason. Like maybe you find some extra speed from a veteran, free agent off the street, like Deshaun Jackson or whatever, but that's not, really changing much for you. So that's part one of that. The other part is, I don't think you want to be in the position where you're hiring a head coach and it's like, oh, you're going to kind of be a head coach and a GM rather, where it's like, oh, you're going to get kind of saddled with Bo Nix and you're also going to get saddled with all the Russ dead cap and, just this kind of nasty roster. I think you wait one more year, you get another, like an actual full draft class in there. That'll help things look a little more appealing to the head coach. You also won't have any of the Russ hangover, radioactive fallout left hanging around. That'll make it more appealing to your next head coach. And 2 years in, if it still looks bad with Bo, it'll be very easy to sever him. He'll give you a very good draft pick to help replace him and help kickstart a 2026 rebuild. And 2026 is also the year when the Broncos have like $250 million in cap space or whatever. It's insane how well set up they are for 2026 in the sense that it's just like clean slate, let your imagination run wild. I think that's when they should bring in the coach and GM if this goes south. Don't bring him in the year before, because then you're kind of doing the same thing you did with Sean Payton, where it's like this awkward marriage and it's like, oh, can you make Russ work? It'll be like, oh, can you make Bo work? And maybe not. And then next year we'll cross that. Let's just start fresh. The Broncos haven't had a fresh start. I was trying to think, because even like it might be since Mike Shanahan was fired, because like there was baggage when Mike Shanahan's replacement came. I think it was McDaniels. And then there was McDaniels baggage hanging around when John Fox came in. And there was John Fox baggage hanging around with Coops came in. And there was Coops baggage hanging around with Vance Joseph came in, and so on and so forth. Just man, it won't matter if things go super south. Like 2020, if things go super south with Bo Nix and Sean Payton and the whole thing, 2025 is going to be bad. Just like unless those characters are able to turn it around. So just give them that year, and if it goes bad, you're able to just sever, clean, fresh start. And I don't want to get that like doomcast, but I'll just answer the question that like I think that's how they should go about it if it does go worst case scenario.
Let me give my counter. And I know that Sean Payton isn't always the most popular guy among this fan base, especially after a loss where people want to blame him for the offensive struggles. I will be very, very sad if this team moves off of Sean Payton because he has put together such a good coaching staff. I get like, guys, the coaching staff right now is genuinely so awesome. And I know everyone wants the new young hot coach, but like the head coach does not do all of the coaching. And man, Sean Payton has brought in so many truly good coaches, guys. Like Zach Strief is genuinely a very good offensive line coach. They have a very good staff of offensive coaches. They have a very good quarterback coach in Davis Webb. I like the defensive staff they've put together with Vance Joseph, Jim Leonard. Like, they have a lot of guys I like on this defensive staff. So, yes, I know the idea of clean slating it might be fun. But, man, I will just be pretty sad if, again, I know it might feel like the world is falling right now, but they've done a pretty good job building this thing up, I think. We just locked in two pillars of the future with freaking Quinn Miners and Patrick Surtain. We have a freaking truly, like, I do want a hot coach. But, no, I just want, like, oh, man, I want us to just be able to have consistency in our coaching staff and not after the first sign of weakness be like, got to get it all out of here, get a new GM, coach, quarterback. Because, guys, like, we got to just show a little bit of patience. I get it. I know Sean tied himself to Bo Nix, and if Bo Nix sucks, that's going to be a really big, like, mark for a lot of people of like, oh, man, he sucks. I'm telling you guys, I do not think that the quickest route to this team fixing everything is like, as crazy as it sounds, I know a lot of people think this, is to then just completely rip it all out of the ground, root up. If that ends up being the case in 2 years, like Zach said, sure. But I will not be happy if at the end of the season, if it all goes bad, Bo Nix sucks, if they end up firing Sean and then they lose a bunch of really good coaches and have to completely start over with who knows, again, Ben Johnson sounds great, but young coaches, as much as I want to be all excited about getting the next idea of a Sean McVay, your next young coach is only as good to me as the staff he brings with him. And young coaches, sadly, don't have a deep bench of coaches. This is why, again, Nathaniel Hackett had a lot of issues. But one of the biggest issues Nathaniel Hackett had was as soon as his first and second OC choice got blocked, he was fucked. The season was over at that point because he was just like, I literally don't have other guys with experience I can turn to. Ben Johnson might be really exciting. Hell, he might have a really good coaching staff that first year. Then his OC might get hired away, and now you're left with him trying to figure out who to replace. Now he hires Pat Shermer like Dion did.
Man, I'm already down enough on football. We don't have to get all the depression in here. We don't have to make me even more depressed. I will say, comment from Sean here. Are we not clean slating it right now? No, man. This is we are in like.
They lost 20-26.
Like a not problematic like comp, but like it's the atomic bomb just went off. Like we are like the explosion itself has cleared away, but it is not safe to go above ground right now. Again, like one way I've been thinking about it is every Sunday when the Broncos go out on that field, the team across from them is going to be trotting out $250 million and 15 top 100 picks or so from the last 3 drafts. The Denver Broncos are going to be trotting out, and I mentioned the draft picks because that's where you're getting cheap talent, kind of the exceptions to the cap investment rule. The Broncos, meanwhile, will be trotting out $200 million on the field and like 7 top 100 players from the last 3 classes. Like it's just dramatically different in so many ways. They have a much lesser talent pool, and these are a much lesser talent pool is the result of past problematic decisions. So it's not a clean, and that's something, remember that going forward. Like this isn't the Sean Payton, Bo Nix, Denver Broncos in all their glory. This is the worst it'll ever be because they are, again, they have 80% the ammunition to build a roster that everyone else does. And then that's not even going into the fact that it's way less than that if you factor in the draft capital. Like it is really rough right now. And that's okay. This was the expectation of cutting Russ. It was taking your medicine to suck a little in the short term so you weren't dragging on Russell Wilson being the team's quarterback for 4 years when he's clearly over the hill. That this was always the trade-off. A shitty, little amount of dead cap and maybe a bad year for it not being a 4-year death march. And again, it sucks, but that's where we're at right now. Let me see. I'd argue we have clean slated it since Peyton got here. I disagree because you have, again, the Russell Wilson trade is responsible for so much of what's wrong with this roster right now. And he inherited so much of that problem that I don't think you can call that anything.
And again,
a clean
so many of the players they moved off of were just aging guys. Like, again, I wish Justin Simmons was able to finish his career as a Bronco, but the reality was he probably wasn't going to get another contract here at the rate he deserves because he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. But this team doesn't have the luxury of paying a high-end safety however much money. And I know he didn't get that this year, but like that's what his next contract, in my opinion, is probably going to end up being. Maybe it won't. Could be completely wrong there, whatever. They moved off of aging guys. They have, and again, like I want to talk about this. Wasn't this like the first year in God knows how long? They didn't switch coordinators. They didn't bring in a bunch of new staff guys. I think they only hired 3 new staff guys, and I don't even think they were replacing guys most of the time. Jim Leonard replaced the DB coach, Christian Parker. Yes, Jamar Kane, I believe, is the new pass rush specialist guy that they brought in. But outside of that, they added an offensive guy in Carmichael. They didn't even fire someone to bring him in. They brought in Jim Leonard to be the new defensive backs coach, who was one of the hottest. They've only added, in my opinion, to the coaching staff. Yes, they did have to make some tough decisions this offseason to move off some of the more veteran players, but that was going to kind of happen regardless, as we've been talking about at this podcast for what feels like 3 years now. Sadly, the guys that were getting to be in their 30s for Denver the past 5 years aren't going to be part of the next great Broncos team. As much as that sucks, this is kind of what it is.
Joey coming in here right at the end question to Zach, your opinion on Russell Wilson. That's a funny bit. Yeah, I think I made it clear to the Russell Wilson stands in the chat. The worst is over. Really, I've been on this for a few years.
Oh, don't say that. Oh no, Zach.
I probably
they got Russell Wilson coming to town next week.
I mean, but that's even like I don't know. Truly, if I don't know. People on Twitter or in the comments or something come up with a punishment for me if Russell Wilson has a good game, because I don't think it's going to happen. I would be so stunned. I think it's very likely. I think it's considerably more likely Justin Fields plays than it is that Russell Wilson looks passable as a quarterback. But Frankie, we've gone for way too long for what I thought was going to be a brief
you totally
show. Did. I'm glad we got into this. We really dissected a lot of this. Can you just please, for as a person who knows ball well, can you give Broncos Country a piece of Bo Nix optimism, a reason to feel maybe hopeful going forward?
I have to do it.
I was hopeful, or maybe the Broncos. I was hopeful you could give us something for the offense. Why we might.
He seemed mentally strong, because I'll be honest, if I had the first 3 quarters that Bo Nix had, I probably just would have gone to the locker room. The fact that he was still able to come out drive after drive and even put together a touchdown drive, I think shows that he's got some mental fortitude there. Because again, you're in Seattle getting just cooked, absolutely flambéed out there. Fans are probably yelling, tossing stuff at you. You're going to the sideline. The Broncos fans are probably booing you. He still came out there and put together a touchdown drive. So, as Bo would probably say, through God, he can do all things. And he did it. He scored 1 touchdown. So that is my optimism. It doesn't seem like he's mentally soft.
Hey, I like it. That's something at least. Well, that'll do it for us here. We'll have a little more in-depth breakdown. Go talking about more aspects of the team and whatnot with Joey and Bree tomorrow. I think we'll be doing our good, bad, ugly, not positive on that. I'll have to double check. And then Tuesday, actually altitude adjustment. No, we will have altitude adjustment on Tuesday. Excuse me. They'll be back on Tuesday. I'm sure they'll have some thoughts on this game. We'll be back with our preview show Wednesday. Bold prediction spectacular. Interesting developments in the bold prediction saga. Joey and I have been arguing about 2022 this entire time. We have never found out. We've never validated the winner of the 2023 season. That is a project I'm working on right now. So that'll be unveiled in that show. Also in that show, I am going to eat the hot chip challenge or whatever for hitting 2,000 subs. That's a good bit delayed, but I said I was going to do it, so that has to happen. Banking on Joey finding those chips and bringing them.
How are you with hot stuff? How do you deal with heat? You good with heat?
I think I'm good with heat, but I'm not great with heat. You know, like I enjoy heat. I make some like good spicy food. I get like spicy food when I go out to restaurants and whatnot, and I like it. But like that's like not even hot food, you know. That's like a torture device, you know. So I don't think like I'm ready for anything like that. You know, I'm of Irish descent, but you know, I think I handle heat fairly well, all things considered.
Fair enough. I don't. I'm a bad with heat.
All right. Well, everyone join that Wednesday show. It should be a lot of fun. And let's hope the Broncos get better. Until next time, everybody, let's go Broncos.